Welcome to the Alldus podcast, Women in ServiceNow series, a brand new series dedicated to showcasing the incredible women leading the way in the ServiceNow ecosystem. With your host, Ailsa Cassie, each episode will bring you inspiring conversations with trailblazing women who are driving innovation, breaking barriers, and shaping the future of ServiceNow. Whether you're an aspiring leader, a seasoned professional, or just curious about the impact of female leadership in the tech space, this podcast is your go-to source for inspiration and empowerment. Join us on this exciting new journey as we dive into the stories, challenges, and triumphs of the remarkable women making their mark within the ServiceNow ecosystem.
You're listening to the Alldus podcast, Women in ServiceNow series. Today, we're joined by a returning guest, someone that featured on our ServiceNow series a couple of years back. Thanks so much for joining us again, Annette.
Thank you, Alyssa, for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Since you were last featured, you've been continuing to drive innovation within the ServiceNow ecosystem, but since it has been a while, can you give us a little catch up and a refresh on where you're at and where you're working at the moment today?
Absolutely. So when I was on the podcast earlier, I had just started in the finance area working with a bank in the Northeast United States area. And since then, I have actually moved to another financial institution that's out in the western area of the US and looking to drive innovation within the platform. So one of the great things about the places I'm at right now is our motto is getting better before we get bigger. So we're looking to use ServiceNow to help us get better before we get bigger.
It's a great way of doing it, isn't it? Keeping it organic.
Absolutely. And there's so many things that you can do when you look in financial areas, and I think most areas where you see a lot of paper pencil. Excel solves everything. And so when you're in those kind of things, it's very narrow-minded in that it's not able to be seen by everyone. You know, like if I have an Excel sheet, if I'm not using a share drive or something like that, it's really hard. You can't do reports off of it. So building upon the platform to make those areas more efficient and more transparent really helps to grow a business.
There's a trend of, obviously, the last time that we spoke with you, you said you just joined a financial company before and now you're working for another bank. So did you just recognise that that was an area of motivation for you and you really kind of thrived in that, or was it a planned change?
So it was a little bit of a planned change. There was someone from my previous employer that I was kind of following into this new opportunity. Okay. And what had excited me about the new opportunity was just where they wanted to take the platform. Okay. In a lot of areas, you know, you're very focused, ITSM, and maybe a couple other things. This was really a transformation and utilizing lots of options on the platform to grow. So that was exciting.
And you're really leading the platform at MidWestOne. So can you share a little bit more about your specific role and responsibilities there?
Absolutely. So I am the platform owner of the platform, but I also am helping to do the transformation to service management. The whole concept of everything that you're doing is a service, and then how do you make that service into something that is repeatable, measurable, and effective and efficient for our customers. So that is our focus. Obviously, everyone starts with ITSM, that's table stakes, but now, you know, we're going to expand on the platform to a lot of different areas that are just going to help us so much, and I'm really excited about that.
And a platform owner role, it can mean so many different things. So I'd imagine your responsibilities are constantly changing and growing. Looking at your instance at the moment, maybe paint a picture for us as to how that looks right now.
Absolutely. So like I said, we started out with ITSM. I think everybody starts with ITSM. So we've got Discovery and the CMDB and all of that up and running really well. Mid that implementation, we took like a hard right turn and did WSD for case management for our facilities team. So we have that up and running, and we're working to reevaluate that a little bit, make it a little bit more efficient, and introduce space planning. At the same time that we have all that going on, we have started our FSO implementation. So really focusing on our operational side of the business and trying to align with efficiencies there and provide that transparency among those departments, provide the best service for our customers.
Fantastic. And looking at the roadmap moving forward, I probably know the answer to this question, just given what you've said there, but what are you really most excited about for the roadmap at MidWestOne?
So right now, the immediate is the FSO and the CSM piece. That is huge in a banking environment. I think in any financial environment, when you're talking about servicing your customer, bringing customer data onto the platform, making sure that you have those securities in place to be protective of that data, but also being able to introduce those efficiencies. So I'm really excited that we're going to be doing this next. We're midway into our discovery and things of that nature. So that's exciting. And since you and I last spoke, we have actually started to tip our toe in GRC. So there'll be more to
Oh,
come
nice.
on GRC in the coming months as well within MidWestOne.
As you said, you're kind of growing the team with the platform, but the platform's really leading that for you. How do you plan these big implementations with the team structure that you've already got at the moment? Like, is it difficult? Does it take very long amount of hours and time-consuming kind of tasks doing workshops with the skeleton or the smaller team that you currently have at the moment?
Yeah, so it is challenging. So I do have a very small team. It's just me and my architect, but we do use partners, which do help with the success. So what we're up against too is that we have small organizations, and by small organizations, I mean you always have those SMEs. So our SMEs are
Sure.
small within the organization, and getting their time because they are SMEs and getting the workshop set up has been challenging, but the excitement within MidWestOne for what ServiceNow can bring has really helped overcome some of those hurdles. So attending the workshops have been really great. The teams have been very excited. We've gotten so much great information that now it's almost like information overload. How do I take all of these things and pocketize it into
Yeah.
what will become, a way to implement this?
Yeah. And with the FSO and the CSM implementations, are there really kind of strict goals that you're looking to achieve with those things, or kind of solutions that are driving that implementation that you selected at the start that you're really excited about the most?
Yeah, so absolutely. So the platform that they're using today is a basic platform. So being able to give them measurable items is really exciting. We are also doing this in a phased approach. So first is getting off of email and getting off of that legacy system that doesn't give you the structure and the data points that you need to drive continuous service improvement. So that's our first phase. Our second phase is going to be integrating with some other systems within the bank, as well as eliminating a legacy other workflow application where it makes sense. Again, driving efficiencies and trying to get people from 3 to 4 systems down to maybe 1 or 2 when it relates to asking for assistance. We also had some audit findings, areas for improvement, not like bad things, but areas for improvement. And so one of the first things that we're tackling is one of those areas. So that's exciting because it's a high volume area. It's very key to our bank. And so we're all really excited to be launching that here in the next few weeks.
Fantastic. And what do you see the most important considerations to be to get maximum value out of these implementations?
So, gee, that's a hard one because there's so much. And what I think ends up happening is you really have to have a good scope and you have to use that methodology of crawl, walk, run. I will get in and I'll be having a discussion with someone. And next thing you know, I've gone from crawl to flying. And I'm like, oh, wait, I've got to step that back because we can't fly on day one. So, having that idea of what my scope is, reminding yourself of the scope, it is okay to crawl before you walk and doing that. And sometimes that's very hard when you're trying to architect solutions, especially when there's so much excitement and
Yeah.
so much that you can see happening in a positive way. You want to go from that start line immediately to the finish line. And so it's really important, I think, that we focus on the crawl, walk, run. The workshops and understanding the business is also very important because then you can really say, I can get you from point A to point B and then from B to C, and you can lay that roadmap out so you don't lose that engagement, you don't lose that excitement.
It's a great way to look at it, and a really thoughtful and strategic approach to such a large task at hand. Looking at banking or considering banking, it can be traditionally quite conservative, old school way of working. What's the culture really like at MidWestOne?
So I'm happy to say that with Midwest One, our culture is a little different than that. I mean, we are
Right.
conservative, obviously, in certain areas, but our CIO is advocate of the platform. So when he
Fantastic.
came in, he really jazzed up the business. He had them go to vision days and workshops and events that ServiceNow was having in the area so they could really see the positive impact. So in the case on this particular effort that we're doing, we have that executive support, that executive buy-in, and the teams are able to see where they can go and where they can do these efficiencies. So we've really kind of sidestepped a little bit of that conservativeness when it comes to deploying ServiceNow. So that is really good. Now we have to balance, obviously, all that excitement with security
Yeah.
and making sure that we, apply the appropriate conservative areas to what we're doing.
It's always good to hear that the leadership are kind of fostering that innovation. And as you said, it sounds like you're kind of harnessing the best of both worlds. You're being conservative where needed, but also driving innovation and being forward thinking in a lot of sense as well. And looking to the kind of biggest challenges that you faced so far, because you are doing so much with your team, what have been the bigger hurdles that you've had to cross so far?
So some of the challenges have really not been with the platform so much, or even with the business side. It's really with the third-party vendors and making sure that you have the right fit. I would never recommend trying to implement ServiceNow in any way without a third-party vendor or without someone with that type of knowledge. But I think what ends up happening is sometimes there's a lot of hype or there's a lot of focus on a particular vendor, and you kind of jump all in, and then you kind of find out that maybe that wasn't the best fit. And so trying to make sure that you have a third party that shares those same principles, those same objectives with you,
Yeah.
is really important. And when you're stepping into what I will call now these kind of niche spaces, because ServiceNow didn't do this in the past. I've been on the platform for a really long time, and you had CSM. There wasn't CSM that's now FSO or, things like that to the business. So when you start getting into those really unique business areas, you need to make sure that you have a provider that understands that. So that is really, I think, a challenge because the provider directory, so to speak, is kind of like a yellow pages. You can kind of flip through it, or a Yelp review, 3 stars here, 4 stars here. How do I pick?
Yeah.
And you just got to be really, really good there, because that can make all the difference in your project.
I speak to a lot of people and companies that decide sometimes even a multi-vendor approach can be good because you can take the good from one place, the good from another, and then combine it depending on what project or implementation it is that you're facing. But yeah, that selection process, although it's time consuming, I'd imagine long term it's got to pay off, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. And I think what happens a lot of times is you get into this idea that, hey, I've got this vendor and they're going to do everything for me. And
Yeah.
I'm learning that that's not the best approach. You
No.
should, do more of those smaller deals like, hey, this is your niche and let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the next phase. And I know you can do it, but who else can? And are you the proper fit? Because not, one size does not fit all when it comes to that.
Is there any kind of particular like vetting questions or any specifics that you would ask a vendor when you're speaking with them to know if they're the right fit for you? Is it like how do you decide?
So for me, it's kind of like a connection thing.
Yeah.
When you start having that personal discussion. So a lot of times you'll get the vendors that'll be like, well, my solution is A, B, C, and D, or I did
Yep.
A, B, and C. And it's very repetitive. And I understand the need for that. I mean, that's how they're going to make money. That's how they're going to be successful. But you will meet a vendor sometimes and you make that personal connection. You see the same vision in them that you're doing, and they're still meeting those objectives with A, B, C's, and D's, but it's more of a personal relationship. And I have found that those have worked better for me than those that are very scripted.
Yeah.
I have not had to get into conversations where, sometimes you get vendors and they go, well, the SOW says in subsection 3, we will do this, and we did this. All the vendors that I have been very lucky to choose for long-term relationships, yeah, you have to write a contract, but we don't get into that, hey, this is what you said. And it's like, okay, yes, we said this. Now, how do we get from this to what you need. And that's really important.
Yeah, so it's kind of trying to avoid those more transactional type of relationships and look for the long-term partnerships instead.
Yeah, absolutely.
And from working in the industry for a long time now, and specifically within the ServiceNow space, you've worked in different leadership positions. I'm curious to know, like, what would you say embodies the most or the best qualities of a leader, and how do you resonate with those qualities?
So I think that one of the things is that you do need to lead to a certain extent by example, but you have to be able to lead. People look to direction and they look for you to take them and visualize to that next level. So there's a couple things that I always keep in my pocket, and they're things that I learned early on in my career in big bad corporate America is what I like to call it. And one of those is, always knowing the hill to die on, especially when you're like a young manager. You come out of the gate and you're like, oh, we got to make this my way. And, as you get more experience, you realize, was that really worth the battle? Sometimes you have to give the little wins to people to get the bigger gains down the road.
Yeah.
So that's one of the principles I use. And then I had an opportunity to work with an executive in corporate America who had great stories, and there were like life lessons buried in them. And one of them was no sewage in your wine. And what he would say is, if you have a barrel of the best wine in the world and it has 1 ounce of sewage in it, what do you have? And the answer was always sewage. And the message to that was about, making sure when you're making your points that you're really factually based, because a lot of times when you're trying to make those points or drive a direction that you want to go home, you have people that are maybe not necessarily on your side, the ones that you have to convince. And if you, in that argument or that presentation, put something in there that isn't correct, then the naysayers will jump on that, and your entire presentation is lost to the one thing that maybe was not as accurate as it could have been.
Yep.
So make sure you don't have sewage in your wine. And then the final thing, because you get into this a lot, especially when you talk about continuous service improvement, you get into, executives saying, well, what's the value for what I'm paying for, is the no-fly report. And the same executive, he had a story where he had been in the Navy and he had been on an aircraft carrier. And the cook in the kitchen would have to do all these reports for the military, and he'd have to send them off weekly. And he was convinced nobody read them. So one day he put in a fly report. He literally had put in how many flies were in his kitchen the previous week. And then he uploaded that and waited. He expected someone to call and be like, dude, this isn't really funny. But they didn't. So he kept doing it every week for about 6 months, and he proved his point. No one's looking at these reports. So he stopped. The day that he stopped, that next week, he got a contact from his command asking where the fly report was. So it was useless. You don't measure data, don't measure success for the sake of measuring. Measure what is actionable, measure what makes sense. I can create reports forever. Don't make fly reports, make reports that have value. So.
Well, I'm sure that guy learned very hard.
Yeah.
So, yeah. They're really great kind of analogies, and just something very memorable as well to live by. So knowing what hill to die on, no sewage in the wine, and no fly report. 3 key things. Great. And because you joined a couple of years ago, I know we had asked you previously what kind of main areas of advice that you would give, or what major lessons that you've had along the way. But looking to you now, 2 years on or 3 years on, I think it might be, what have been the kind of key learns that you've had in that last while of your career?
I continue to find that understanding the business is critical in what you do. And that is really important to me. And when we're doing platform stuff, a lot of times, you'll have that third party vendor and they'll be like, I want to talk to the customer. I want to do this. And that vendor is learning those processes. And that doesn't work in the long run, from my opinion. You really have to understand where the challenges are so that you can visualize and take on that support long term. So making those connections in the business is critical. And it's difficult at times when you're jumping into new organizations, new lines of business that you're not accustomed to. Just be that 3-year-old, that why, so that you can understand and you can help drive those successes. And then you are going to be better for it. You're going to understand the business better, and that's going to make you better career-wise, better as a leader, and better as a problem solver.
Yeah. Definitely. I know it's never bad to ask more questions. It's bad to sit and not know and waste loads of time and then eventually have to circle back and ask the question anyway. I think it's really great advice, but especially for those that are slightly earlier on in their career, one that feels daunting, but actually, it benefits you, and it also benefits probably the managers that you're reporting to and the people reporting to you as well. So it's a great bit of advice to finish up the episode on. I'm really appreciative of you to join our Women in Service Now series. It's been lovely to have you back featuring on the Alldus podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alyssa. I really enjoy it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.